Rumors are swirling as we head in to the new year. Let's talk about that and more all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Wednesday, January 1st, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome in, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Happy New Year as we put a bow on the calendar year 2024 and head into 2025. Man, the passage of time is so odd. You know, like I can remember being in kindergarten and my elementary school would have like bricks for each class that came through. And so I remember sitting outside as they installed the class that said class of 2016. And I was like, that is forever. Like that they will literally never come. It's 2003 or 4. It's like, that'll never happen. And now we're almost 10 years removed from that. We're in the 2020s. Like just, you know, people used to write books about what the world would look like in like the 2000s, right? It was like this futuristic, you know, crazy world. And it's just wild that we're finally here. Today, we're going to talk about a lot of rumors that are swirling in the Tigers universe. Basically, we have a daily Bregman segment. I feel like it's not intentional, I promise, but literally every time I have a show, there is an update or an updated report or some sort of rumor that I haven't discussed yet involving the Detroit Tigers and Alex Bregman. So we are going to update you on that situation. We'll talk about Anthony Santander, which it sounds like the Tigers have some interest in him. Ha-Sung Kim, who we've talked about a few times this offseason. We're going to talk about Roki Sasaki, who we also kind of have a episodely segment on at this point. A rumor involving Matt Vierling to the Yankees. And then put a bow on the year at the end of the show. So starting with Bregman, as we finally get into the meat and potatoes here, the most recent update is just that the Tigers are quote unquote all in on Alex Bregman. And that is a report that has been made by a few people. I know MLB Trade Rumors put it out there, but I believe Evan Petzold of the Freep, who we give credit to like almost episodely as well, I'm realizing. Very deserved. Evan, great guy. And talked a lot about how the Tigers are being pretty aggressive with the Bregman sweepstakes, which is very exciting. You know, it has been forever since we have been all in, quote unquote, on a big name free agent, right? It's been forever. You want to talk about the passage of time, right? It is. But when was the last time, legitimately, when was the last time the Tigers were like big players in a big name free agent? It has to be like, you know, depending on your opinion of, you know, like Justin Upton or Jordan Zimmerman. Like it kind of has to be those two. It has been so long. And to just know that they actually want an all-star caliber player that costs a pretty penny and are willing to go out and be aggressive and get him. Now, this is not a guarantee that he's going to be a Tiger. I still have massive reservations, as I have told you all, and I have explained a lot over the last, 4 months, 6 months, dating back to the regular season. I still have very, very serious doubts that this is going to happen, but this is also the most optimistic I've ever been about Bregman to Detroit ever. Right now is the most optimistic I've been. Doesn't mean it's over 50% in my head, at least. but it's the most optimistic I've been about it. And I think that that's worth something. Not that my opinion is worth anything, but just the fact that there seems to be a growing optimism amongst the whole fan base. I think that that is worth something. And so it is just so refreshing. And when you talk about, on the field, the X's and O's of what the Tigers are going to look like next year, if Bregman is to, jump on board, it sounds like they don't want to eclipse 200 mil. We've talked about that a few times over the last several weeks. The Tigers don't want to break that $200 million mark. Look, all I'm saying is if anybody was willing to break 200 mil, this wouldn't have been a story and this whole saga would have been over weeks ago. So there seems to be a little bit of a stalemate type of situation going on here. And we will see how it plays out for the Tigers. But as I was saying before ADHD happened, when we're talking about the X's and O's and what the Tigers are going to look like, if Bregman is to join, a lot of that revolves around, that's the word, Matt Vierling is like a huge moving piece in this. I guess it revolves around Bregman, but Vierling is the moon in Bregman's solar system. I don't know. I wasn't a good student. So I think that, and we'll talk about Vierling here because the Yankees are reportedly, there's actually, the report isn't that the Yankees are interested in Bregman. That's not the report. The report is, it's not even a report. It's an opinion piece by a writer for The Athletic that thinks that Vierling may be a good fit and they may, kick the tires on Vierling if the Tigers were to get Alex Bregman. And the reason for that is because Vierling is, if they don't get Bregman, and this was very well laid out by Evan Petzold of the Freep, if the Tigers don't get Bregman, Vierling's going to be the third baseman. Just like he was last year, he's going to be, they'll do their platoon game and whatnot, but he's going to be the primary third baseman going into the season and play a lot of third. If they get Bregman, then finally, the situation that I have been begging for involving Matt Vierling is finally going to occur. And that is that he is the super utility that can play 5-6 different positions, hit anywhere in the lineup, and still play in 120 plus games, even though heck, with AJ Hinch, maybe play in, not start, but just participate in 150 plus with all the pinch hitting and whatnot. And he can be that incredibly valuable super utility 2.5+ WAR player. I have been begging for that to be Matt Vierling's reality pretty much since he came on board. I remember being probably too overly optimistic and too excited. I think that's probably fair in hindsight about the Gregory Soto trade the day it happened. But I think that Vierling, we have this conversation every single year, and really more often than that. Every 3 months, we have a whole Matt Vierling breakdown thing. And it's if he can put the tools together a little bit more, then maybe. And I think that what allows him to do that best is hitting 6 through 9 in the lineup and giving anybody a day off or helping anything with AJ as far as a matchup goes by being able to play, again, 4, 5, 6 different positions. So all of that is to say that I hope the Tigers actually are all in on Alex Bregman. I think that would be a fantastic sign of things to come. I think that would make this team look a lot better on paper. You're talking about already an incredibly valuable outfield. You're talking about then adding Torres and Bregman to an infield that needed some help. That's 2 righties. You're taking out Spencer Torkelson, who struggled down the stretch. That becomes a pretty, again, on paper, we'll see, becomes a pretty exciting and solid, not I'm not trying to say they're it's Murderer's Row plus Cano or anything like that, but Javi obviously not being Murderer's Row. But I am saying that would give, I think, people a lot more optimism. And so I understand their hesitation to go over 200 mil with a player like Bregman, but I also think that if you can get him for a price you want, you should be very aggressive because he fits this team dang near perfectly. Okay, let's talk about some alternate options to Bregman, as laid out by Evan Petzold of the Freep. We'll talk about Anthony Santander, who it sounds like the Tigers have some interest in, and also Ha-Seong Kim, who we talked about earlier in the offseason, and we will dig up that because it sounds like there's some loose interest there as well. And we'll get more into the Vierling, New York stuff and Torkelson trade and et cetera, et cetera. We will do all of that right after this. Got to talk to you. I'll tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score touchdowns, how many points each team will score. It is absolutely thrilling. Again, which players will score a touchdown. There's over-unders, there's spreads, you name it, FanDuel has it. So go to FanDuel.com today. That is FanDuel.com today for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back on Friday as we continue to recap and update you all on all of the rumor mill. Assuming no news happens the next 48 hours, we'll do our New Year episode then. But because this offseason stuff is starting to pick up a little bit, we're getting a little bit closer to decision time for a lot of players. I felt a need to do this episode today, and then probably Friday again, just depending on what happens in the news week. Friday or next Monday, we'll have kind of our New Year's resolution cheesy episode we always do for the new year. Let's talk about Anthony Santander, who in the same article, Evan Petzold of the Freep mentioned that he was somewhat of a potential fallback option for Bregman, and that there is some interest there from the Detroit Tigers. Now, this all ties back to Matt Vierling, which is so funny, but, that's not even the right wording. It doesn't tie back to Vierling. The decision is with Santander or Bregman, but all of this affects Vierling. Because if they miss out on Bregman, then Vierling is going to play a heck of a lot of third, very little outfield, and they're going to go get Santander to be their righty bat. That their big right-handed power hitting addition in the offseason. He's going to play a lot of corner outfield. Kerry Carpenter is going to play a lot of DH. And Vierling's going to play a lot of third base. If they get Bregman, then Vierling is going to be the righty outfielder that plays corner outfield and can play some center field too, obviously, if needed. And Bregman is obviously going to man third base. So it's just kind of funny how all these moving parts are all connected. And I think that the order of operations there I'm fine with. There's some people have a debate on whether Santander should be the #1 option and Bregman should be the fallback or whatever. I think it makes sense to go after one of the better third basemen in baseball. And if you don't get him, then you go to the corner hitter outfielder. There's just way more value in an all-star caliber third baseman. So I think that makes sense. Now, the interesting thing that we hadn't really heard too much about is the fallback for the fallback option, which sounds like it's Ha-Seong Kim. Again, same article, Evan Petzold of the Free. Evan wrote, I think one of his quotes was plan C, right? Kind of a third option among these. And we talked about Kim earlier in the offseason because on paper, it actually kind of is a very much a Scott Harris fit, right? Like you're talking about a guy who's really high OBP, really good defense, like solid contact numbers, not a lot of power, but like gets on base and is a great defender, can play multiple positions. Like he kind of is the perfect Scott Harris player. So I do think that makes sense, but I also think the Tigers are really trying to add some more power. And that's not to say Bregman is like a big power hitter, but Bregman's going to hit you 15 plus, maybe even 20 plus, depending on how his, a lot of Crawford box homers, obviously, so how that translates to Comerica. But, he is going to rip doubles into the gap and he's not going to, He's not going to have a little amount, I guess is what I'm trying to say, of home runs. He's not going to shy away from that either. So I think that I would be more aggressive on Kim, but that is because I would get Ha-Seong Kim to play shortstop for my baseball team. And the Tigers look like they have no interest in bringing in someone to play shortstop. And it's going to be, as I said on Monday's show, the Javi Baez and Trey Sweeney show. So I think that it makes sense from that perspective why he is last on the pecking order. But I think for me, in a perfect world, if I'm being super nitpicky, I would go after Bregman and Kim would play shortstop for me, and Bregman would play third, and I'd just have pretty much an entirely new infield, which sounds, I guess, dramatic, but like that was the biggest area of need pretty comfortably from the 2024 Tigers. Speaking of the infield from the 2024 Tigers, there are already a billion rumors flying around and hypothetical trades and whatnot from other fan bases on Spencer Torkelson and potential trades with him. There's already a large group of the portion, I should say, of the Tigers fan base that is, mocking trades. There's already plenty of other fan bases that are starting to take stabs at mock trades as well. It sounds like one of the potential suitors was the Red Sox. I don't know if I really believe that. And the reason why is because if they were to bring in Bregman, let's say the Red Sox get Bregman, he's their third baseman. Tristan Casas is a phenomenal baseball player. He is a very, very, very good hitter. And I've been a big fan of his since he was in the minor leagues, and he's really good. So why are you bringing in a faulty, struggling first baseman when you have, like, unless you just want to bring Torkelson in to DH against lefties? And even then, like, he didn't exactly crush the ball in any situation last year, 2024. So I don't know. I can't imagine that. And I think from the Tigers' perspective, you got to think about perceived value, right? What is the best case scenario for Torkelson from the Tigers' perspective? Best case scenario is that he figures it out and he doesn't start the season at first base, but he goes to Toledo or he comes off the bench or whatever ends up happening. We'll talk about that plenty more as we get closer to spring training. And he figures it out and he ends up being a solid. I think the ship has kind of sailed on him being like, this generational power hitter, which is what we were told he was going to be on draft night. But like, if he can be a solid, well above league average hitter that can hit 30 plus home runs and be serviceable defensively, there's going to be value in that. That is best case scenario. Is giving up on that worth what you would get in return for him? And here's the kicker, because I know a lot of you are already like, yeah, duh. It's not a lot. He has no trade value. So, like, if you're weighing who's going to trade for, if you were a fan of another team, if you were an organization, a different organization, a fan of a different organization, please enlighten me on what you would give up for a first baseman that hasn't played good defense and has hit for 2 months in his major league career. It's not a lot, y'all. So, like, I think that is the pros and cons they have to weigh as a front office. If someone else out there is willing to give you, serviceable major league talent or future major league talent, then yeah, like, pull the trigger. He doesn't have a spot on the team currently. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying don't trade him. If you get an offer that blows you away, pull the trigger. But I don't think any other team is chomping at the bit to bring in a faulty first baseman. There's just not a lot of value there in terms of trade value. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye out for. But that's kind of where I stand. And I certainly don't really understand the Boston Red Sox, which is the first team that was kind of thrown out there. Let's talk about Sasaki, and we'll talk about Vierling and send you off on your new year. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to you today about our friends over at Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a baseball game, obviously last year. The energy and excitement were absolutely Unforgettable. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature also filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets for an upcoming, again, basketball game, trying to go catch a Pistons game. Detroit basketball, we're so back, baby. Using the Game Time app. And with Game Time Picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view of my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering a great seat at unbelievable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, everybody, welcome back to our third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and not turning in, as always. Well, maybe you're in a car. So Roki Sasaki, we have had an update on him like every episode since I don't even know when Bush was in office. I feel like this is one of those things where we're just going to have to wait it out. It sounds like the decision is going to come week and a half into the new year. So we got a little bit of time until a decision is adamant. I think that you will probably see like these are the final 3 teams or whatever before he makes a decision. We'll see if the Tigers make the cut for that. I am not very confident that he's going to be a Tiger. I just that seems I'd be thrilled. I hope he is. And I think the Tigers have a pretty good pitch, actually, more likely than maybe initially thought by me. But I do think that there are just so many bigger markets and so many other talented organizations that I think he probably leans in another direction. And like, what are the odds, right? Like 1 of 30 and just like what the Tigers have been for the last 10 years. What are really the odds here? But, I've been very impressed with how, I was going to say his camp has handled this whole thing, but it's really him. His agent came out earlier in the week and said that he's pretty much, I think his exact quote was driving the ship or steering the ship. Like Sasaki himself is just doing everything. Very abnormal for, you hear about players all the time that are free agents and they're kind of just like, oh yeah, just tell me what the highest offer is and that'll be like what it is. I don't want any part to do with this. Don't bother me, whatever. And he seems to be very hands-on. And so that makes it exciting. There's no players are allowed in any of these meetings with organizations. And it sounds like he'll start doing in-person meetings here again in the next week or so. So that'll be something to keep an eye out for, although I am not really holding my breath for him to be a Tiger. I would be thrilled, though. That would be so unbelievably cool and exciting. Let's talk Matt Vierling. One of the rumors that was flying out there from, as I said earlier, The Athletic, was Matt Vierling potentially being a fit for the Yankees, especially if the Tigers do land Bregman. I don't think so. I really don't. One of my reasonings for this is just strictly a vibe. Okay, there's no logic or reasoning to it. If you disagree, then that is absolutely your right. There is no factual evidence of this, but I think that the Tigers just love Matt Vierling. Like, I think Scott Harris and his front office just adore him, and I think that the coaching staff adores him. And I really now look, if they give you an offer you can't refuse, he's like a 2-win player. Like, you got to move on from him. If somebody gives you, Jackson Holiday for him, obviously you're going to pull trigger on it. But like, I really don't get the impression that this front office is going to be in a hurry to trade Matt Vierling ever. Back when James Edwards III, shout out James Edwards III, man. Just he's now a beat writer for the New York Knicks. Congratulations to him. But he got that job like 6 months ago. But he was a longtime beat writer for the Detroit Pistons. And I remember a quote from him. I don't know why this sticks out in my mind so much. People were debating whether to trade Isaiah Stewart or not. And this is when Troy Weaver was still the GM. And James Edwards III said, he goes, as long as he's like, the impression I get is that as long as Troy Weaver is GM of this team, Isaiah Stewart is going nowhere. and that he loves Isaiah Stewart. And that is just how I feel. So again, no facts to back this up. I could, 2 hours from now, he could get traded to the Yankees and I could look like an idiot. But like that is just an impression I get. Far more tangible for this conversation is just the fit with the Tigers. Again, I think he is, and again, as I've given credit to like 15 times this episode, Evan Petzel does a great job laying this out. If the Tigers get Bregman, then Vierling is going to be the fourth outfielder and play all four outfield positions. He has a role on this team. It's not like, oh, they get Bregman and Vierling's just the odd man out, which is what the national media over in this article is kind of making it sound like. That's just not true. And vice versa, if they get Santander, then Vierling's going to play 100+ games at third base. So, like, I don't see it. I think that the Yankees probably can, I don't want to say, like, shoot higher, but, like, they've had a pretty impressive offseason. And I think that, like, obviously they lose Soto, but I think they kind of, Moneyball, recreate him in the aggregate. I think they probably did recreate a lot of that value through a lot of really good moves that I liked a lot. We'll talk about that as we get closer to spring training. But I think, when just to put a bow on this in general, like I can't fathom the Tigers are gonna be like, oh, and like this is me getting ahead of myself. They could get none of these guys very easily, right? That they could not get Bregman, they could not get Santander, they could not get Kim. And then they desperately need Matt Vierling. I think he's a decently sized piece of the puzzle still, even if he's not the starting third baseman. And I don't think the Yankees are going to pay what the Tigers would want to receive to bring in a player of that caliber. Okay, that's pretty much all I got, man. Happy New Year! I appreciate you all greatly. I love this. I really do. I look forward to it every day. I am very, very grateful for the listeners of this show as we head into yet another year. And hopefully, 2024 was very kind to this program. And I'm very appreciative of all of you because that is why, right? It was kind to me because you all decided to take 30, usually probably closer to 35, don't tell my bosses, minutes a day here to tune in to what I have to say, which I am just forever grateful for. I never take for granted. And I really do try. I try. I promise. And I'm very, very appreciative. So happy New Year to all of you. Hope you all have a safe and fun New Year's Eve, New Year's morning. And I hope that we can continue this momentum because for me, I want to continue this momentum because that means that there is a fantastic community that is growing within Locked On Tigers, but that also probably means that the Detroit Tigers are halfway decent, and I want that for all of you and for this city more than I want anything else. So, love y'all, appreciate y'all. We'll be back on Wednesday. If there is no big news or big updates from now until we'll be back on Wednesday, we'll be back on Friday. If there's no big updates between now and Thursday night, then you can expect just kind of a New Year's, what are the New Year's resolutions for the Tigers? Kind of a cheesy episode we do every year. All right. Peace and love. Going to therapy is dope. Thank you all so much for continuing to support this show. Go Tigers, baby.